Mr. Chair, if it's okay, if we can move to the next witness.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the next witness is 256, which is page 149 of your bundle. Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. Will you be
Message.
will you be testifying today in Farsi or in English?
ترجیح میدم بدنین که
due to the fact that they might have the mistakes might happen, I will try to speak in Persian, so that there is no problem.
Mr. Chair is going to swear you in.
Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. Would you repeat after me, please? I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth.
من سوگند
I solemnly declare to tell the truth,
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
to the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
The questions now from counsel, followed by questions from the panel. Thank you.
Mr. Witness, we're aware that
خواهش میکنم.
Yes, please.
you gave a statement to the tribunal and that most of the information you received was from different sources, which you would like to keep confidential. So I'd ask whatever you say to make sure that you honor that. Could you please tell the tribunal what information you wanted to share about November 16th, 15th and 16th based on your statement?
اطلاعاتی که من
The information that I wanted to share with you goes back to the methodology of the orders that were issued and the crackdown of the people of Bushehr, how it happened, and those who had a hand in it in the province of Bushehr. If you allow me, before I start my statements, I also wanted to add that in order to know the prevailing situation in Iran better now, we should consider that the country of Iran is led and is managed by a faqih, an Islamic jurist, because he considers himself above the law, and therefore all the laws are dictated by him. And the day that an accident happened in Bushehr, from the Security Council in that place had a hand in it, because the representative of the leader also sits on that council, and that they gave it to the Minister of Interior, and they also communicated it to Prime Minister.
Mr. Witness,
excuse
one
me.
second. Okay. Can you, for right now, can you just focus on the 15th and 16th of November? Thank you.
بسیار خوب.
Very well. On those days before the meeting was held and before the governor took part in the Provincial Security Council, he announced that the view of the leader is that everything has to be wrapped up quickly. And that's what he said in the meeting. And his deputies, and I can name them who they were, if you allow me, is I am allowed to name the deputies?
Please.
Okay.
The first person is Abbas Bazegard-Zadeh. He was the supervisor of the political office in the governorate of Bushehr, and he was the head of the social office in Bushehr. Saeed Zarifard was the next person, who is known as Saeed the Interrogator, because he is one of the members of the Ministry of Interior in the province, and that's what he used to do before he had the present position. And then you have Mehdad Sotude, who is the development deputy, and also there were other people, but suffice it to name only these three people. These are the three people who told the Governor General that it is better that because of the strategic position of Bushehr, if something is supposed to happen, it will make a lot of noise in the world because of the nuclear problems and all the other problems related to it that the regime has. He said that now that we have an order from the office of the leader, it is much better for us because we can use as much force as we want and we can encounter the protesters as any way that we want. And that's what they did in Bushehr. The protesters, they did not attack a bank, they did not break any windows, they did not do anything. But from the very beginning of this meeting, that's what they decided. The Governor General was not an indigenous person, and he had given all the power of authority to his deputies who were from the place. And unfortunately, the accidents happened. If you have other questions now, I am, of course, at your disposal to respond to the questions.
Actually, turning you over to the panel, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon. I'm finding it very difficult to understand your evidence. Now, don't tell us anything that would reveal your identity, okay? But as I understand it, you are talking about Bushehr. Is that right?
بله من
Yes, in my capacity as a free journalist, I cover whatever pertains to Bushehr. So whatever I'm going to tell you here in the tribunal pertains only to the province of Bushehr, yes.
Okay. And as a journalist, you would like to tell us about the 15th and the 16th of November, or would you like to tell us about something else? Because I still don't understand what you really want to tell us. You told us something about an announcement that was made, and you said that before that, there was not really any bad steps taken by the authorities. They were always behaving properly. And it's because of this announcement that they suddenly thought that they had the license and the freedom to do whatever they want. That's what you said?
خیر
No, the people in charge did not want to have a conciliatory approach, although we were peaceful. What I want to say is that there were a number of people who helped the crackdown, and these are the people who really have to be prosecuted according to the law. Somebody like Khalil Waizi, who was the commander of the police force, he's not the only person who was at fault, and we have to mention the names of these people because they had an essential role in the crackdown and the suppression of the people of Bushehr. And what I want to mention here is how this happened in Bushehr and how these people were involved in it. Yes, the judge is correct in the saying that I wanted to mention these names here, which have not been mentioned anywhere else so far.
So why don't you start by mentioning one name at a time and tell us what that one person did and why you say he did it? Because as a journalist, you must have a source somewhere. You don't have to tell us your source, but tell us one by one the names of the people you are talking about and what you say they did.
ببینید
You see, these people were the advisors and the deputies to the governor of Bushehr. And before the meeting of the Security Council was held in the province, they had a private meeting with the governor. And because the governor was not from Bushehr himself, he asked for the view, for the recommendation, what to do. And these are the people who gave him the guidance, gave him the recommendation. Perhaps in that private meeting, the governor said that the order from above, from the leader, is that you have to crack them down. But the method for it was left to the governor of Bushehr. And these people around him decided and recommended that in the most brutal way, the crackdown has to happen and people have to be suppressed. And Mr. Abbas Sabzegarzadeh, as I said, he was the supervisor and the head of the political office in the governorate of Bushehr. And he also had another position, which was high position, Mr. Saeed Zarifar. He was also one of the deputies in Bushehr of the governor, and he also was an interrogator before that position. And also Mr. Mehdad Sotouzeh, he was also the deputy for development in Bushehr. And these three are the people who gave the recommendation to the governor for the people of Bushehr in the most brutal way. And the aim was that the protests would be finished and wrapped up as quickly as possible. That's to say, just to suppress them as quickly as possible.
Understand all that. So the name somebody would have taken down, well, let's get a bit more basic information. According to your information, when was this meeting held? As I understand you, there was a meeting between the governor and a number of people. When do you say, when, according to your information, was this meeting held?
You see, the meeting that was with the governor was the Provincial Security Council meeting. And that was after he had this private meeting with his advisors and his deputies. And it was on Saturday, the 25th of Aban, that this meeting was held.
I'm talking first, let's take it in order. I'm talking about, let's talk about the first meeting first, go to the second meeting second, and see what we're going to do. I wonder, Council, whether, and I ask the members of the panel too, whether it wouldn't be better for someone to consult and get this evidence in a particular kind of order, or do people think we should just proceed as it is?
We have a short statement from him, Justice Yaqub, but
Doesn't do it systematically, does it?
no, it is a little bit.
All right. So you think we should just carry on?
Yes.
All right. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's start with the first meeting. When was the first meeting? Well, let's see. At what time on Friday did everyone get to know about the fuel price increase? Let's start there, according to your record and your knowledge.
روزش رو ساعتش رو
As to the hour of it, I don't remember precisely what the hour was when people were informed, but I do know that the meeting happened on Saturday a bit after the suppression took place. That's to say, there was a first meeting, and that first meeting was between the governor and his deputies and his advisors, what to say in the second meeting, which was the meeting of the Provincial Security Council. And in that meeting, they decided that the suppression should take place in the most brutal way. And therefore, this was a decision which was taken in the Provincial Security Council. And on that same day, there was unfortunately the crackdown. Now, what hour it took place, I don't know.
I'm sorry to hold you like this, but the first thing is, you see, at around what time, according to your information, was the first meeting on Saturday?
فکر میکنم
I think it was before 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, exactly what time, unfortunately, I don't remember it now.
That's fine. And according to your information, how many people attended? This was the first secret meeting. How many people attended the meeting? The governor and how many others, more or less?
ببین اون
You see, the meeting that you are referring to, it was the second meeting. That was the meeting of the Provincial Security Council. The secret one that you're talking about was between the governor and his deputies and his advisors. I don't know whether you understand me or not. Before the meeting of the Provincial Council, there was a private meeting before that meeting with his deputies, with his advisors. What to say in the second meeting?
I'm now talking only about the first meeting. The first meeting was attended by the governor, right?
yes
And it was attended by the governor and his
Yes.
others.
خیر منظورتون استاندار هستش فکر میکنم
You mean Governor General. The first meeting, the Governor General was attending with his consultants and deputies. The province is in the hands of the Governor General. Governor is a lower rank. Governor was only responsible for the city of Bushehr, but the Governor General is responsible for the province. While in the U.S., Governor is responsible for a state, but in Iran, Governor General is in charge of the province.
Thank you very much. So
You're welcome.
the Governor General met with how many deputies and others?
بله در جلسه محرمانه‌ای که داشتن بله این کار رو انجام دادن و در اونجا تصمیم گیری شد که
Yes, he had a meeting with his deputies and consultants, and they made a decision over there to suppress the people who objected the increase in the price, and they transferred the decision-making to a session in which the other people were present, and the session has also been mentioned by the Human Rights Organization. If you want me, I can just explain about the names. And
Now, I'm sorry. Let's take it slowly, right, please? I know you're in a hurry, but let's take it slowly. The only thing I want to know now is how many deputies and others attended the meeting with the governor as far as you know.
as far as I know, the ones who were really influential in the meeting were three individuals whose names I mentioned. Abbas Barzegarzadeh, who was the head of the political office and election of Bushehr province, and at the same time he was the general manager of the social affairs of the province. And one can say that Mr. Saeed Zarinfar was the other one who was the who was the Director General for the Economic Affairs, and there was another individual who was responsible for the Development Affairs. There were about 10 people over there in that session, maybe. But the ones who were very influential, according to the documents that we have received, were these three individuals who had the greatest influence on the Governor General.
Okay, that's fine. Then at that meeting, the governor conveyed to them what had been decided by the Supreme Chief. Is that right?
Yes, he told them that the Supreme Leader believes that the protests should be wrapped up as quickly as possible. I can read it and see what exactly the word used was, if you want me. The Governor General announced that the Supreme Leader wants us to wrap up the protests as soon as possible. When one talks about the Supreme Leader's views, that means that he had ordered for the suppression and the crackdown, but in the administrative sessions, never a direct reference is made to this issue. When you talk about the leader, he would just say that you have the discretion, and the Governor General would be authorized to treat the people the way they deem appropriate. But how they should be treated is in fact somehow explained by the office of the leader or the leader himself. Not only he issues the order, but in every city there are some Friday prayer leaders who represent a leader in those cities. And if we consider that the leader of the country was not aware, and this is impossible to happen, that in Iran, no, the Supreme Leader would not be aware of issues, because he believes himself above the law, and nothing happens in the country without his knowledge. And he was aware of what was going on, and he has a representative in Bushehr, and he is nobody but the Friday prayer of Bushehr. And if he wanted, and he was against the suppression and the crackdown, he could have prevented it. But since he had ordered himself, he had the suppression take place, and he had ordered the Governor General to do the suppression. And the Governor General, with the advice he received from his deputies, and the deputies, since they were local in the province, they decided to carry out the crackdown in the worst possible manner against the peaceful protests, the people who had broken nowhere and had caused no trouble.
Said that about 3 times now, and I want us to get beyond that if we can. So they had this meeting,
بفرمایید من در خدمتتون هستم.
and was there a document, because you said you can read something about it, was there a document issued at that meeting?
من خودم شخصا
I was not present in the meeting myself, but there were individuals who, because of security reasons, I cannot mention their names. We have some people who have informed us of the result of the meeting.
Make you a copy of the document by any chance?
منظور
What do you mean by document? That the Supreme Leader had made an order?
Announcement that he made may have been in writing, and you may have asked him, oh, now, like a good journalist, let me see this.
ببینید
Khamenei, unfortunately, never directly issues orders. He would never accept responsibility of what he orders. He just speaks in a special way. He, in the Supreme National Security Council, which was held, and the Interior Minister attended it, and the representative of Khamenei was present in that meeting, they decided that the protests should be suppressed. And the Interior Minister had told the Governor Generals that they should suppress the protests. And the Governor Generals carried out the order. This is an unwritten law in Iran. Those who are involved know that when the suppression order is being issued by the Interior Minister, this comes from the leader. There is no need for a written order. And be sure that Khamenei would never give a written order. You are a legislator. You would never give a document that may be used against you in future. So all these were verbally transferred, and it happened at the highest level. No document was exchanged, and we only have what the Governor General had said. He quoted the Supreme Leader that he had ordered for the suppression. And the individual who was present in the session, I cannot explain any further, mention the names, but I may say that the individuals have transferred the information to us. And this is very common in the hierarchical structure in Iran. So you never give a document. You can never find a document from a dictator on which he has written that I will order you to suppress people's uprising. You can never find such a thing in any part of the world.
But now, did you have one person giving you information about this first meeting? We're only talking about the first meeting. 2 people or 4 people? I just want to know how many people you had who told you this.
ببینید من اگر بخوام
If I want to give you the names or mention the numbers, then I have facilitated the work of the security forces in Iran or the intelligence forces in Iran in order to identify these individuals so they would know how many people are informing us. Therefore, I'm not allowed to do so, and I'm not in any liberty to release their names. But if you really want me to do so, well, I may do so.
Names, all I want to know, all I want to know is how many people gave you this information about the first meeting? 1 people, 2 people, 3 or more?
It was just one individual. But that individual, I did not want to mention even the number. Now, by mentioning the number, which has been 1, that makes it easier for the intelligence officers to find him.
Excuse me. Witness, I'm afraid you're not helping the panel with your answers. Your answers are way beyond the questions asked. Please focus on the question and answer yes or no to Justice Jacob's questions. Please do not go beyond the question asked so we can follow your statements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So
Yes,
one
yeah.
person informed you. When did you get the information, more or less, if you can remember? How long after that Saturday? Was it long after or shortly after?
میشه گفت که
I may say that I received the information a long time has passed since that time. I don't really recall when I received the information, but it has been a long time that I received the information.
Then, that's all you want to say about
در اون
the...
زمان من البته عذر
I apologize for interrupting. I should also add that I have a page on Instagram. I had published the news on that Instagram page, but the date I don't remember when I published it or when I received the information.
The problem is that if you tell us where and how you published it, then people will know your name. That's the problem. And you need to find some way of getting
نه من مشکلی ندارم با
I don't have any problem with having my name revealed. Everybody knows me.
So, how many have you written newspaper articles on this?
ببینید روزنامه نیست چون
It is not a newspaper. These are things that, of which if you write, you will go to prison in Iran. I have it on my Instagram page. I published it at the time on my Instagram page. As I said, I have Instagram pages and I publish news on the province.
Copies of your Instagram pages somehow? And translations of them?
مشکلی که
The problem is that my previous page, as I had published the information, the Islamic Republic closed down that page. I don't have that page anymore. But the second page, my second page on Instagram on Bushehr province is available, but it's not on the same news. That page of mine was closed down somehow.
All right, then then the second meeting. Who attended the second meeting? Just tell us very quickly again.
اوکی تا اونجا که من
As far as I am aware, Khalil Waizi, Abbas Jamshidi, who was the governor of Bushehr, Ali Asanpur, who was the prosecutor, General Razdor, who was the RGC commander, and we may say, well, these are the individuals that I am confident that they were present. In the first session, there was another name as well. There was another name who attended the first meeting, which I forgot to mention. If you would allow me, I would want to mention that name as well. And that is Majid Khorshidi, the political deputy of the Governor General of the province. I forgot to mention that name. That was the name of an individual who attended the first meeting. And apart from the people who attended the second meeting, all the members of the Provincial Security Council also attended the meeting.
More public. You said that the first meeting was secret. Was the second meeting equally secret, or was it less secret? And if so, how was the second meeting less secret than the first?
میشه گفت از
In terms of the number of people who attended in the second meeting, we may say there were a larger number of people attending the second meeting as compared to the first meeting. In the first meeting, only the confidant of the Governor General attended.
So how many people attended the second meeting?
در جلسه
Unfortunately, I don't know about the exact number of people who attended the second meeting. It is a confidential meeting anyway. It's not something public. Not everyone knows about it. But I am sure that there were a larger number of people who attended it. And that reduces from its confidentiality because a larger number of people are attending a meeting.
Anything else you wish to add to help us? Something that you have not
فقط
told us
تاکید
yet.
دارم تنها تاکید من این است
I just want to stress that unfortunately the crackdown that took place had no reason.
مردم نشسته بودن در مقابل استانداری که یک دفعه
The people were just sitting, had a sit-in before the Governor General's office, and they suddenly were attacked by the security forces, and there was no reason for such a crackdown. Another thing that I can remember.
Is this your information?
خیر من اونجا نبودم
No, I was not there. I just received the information through some resources.
Quietly, okay. Anything else?
بله و
Yes, I just want to say that the police intentionally led the protest to violence.
Okay, that's an inference from what you've told us so far, right?
میشه گفت بر اساس
It is based on the information I have received from inside the governor's office and the province.
You've given us already, right?
بله درست
Yes, that is correct.
Anything else you want to add? New matter, because we've heard you very carefully.
بسیار خوب یک مطلب دیگر هم که
Another issue is identification of individuals in Bushehr. Happened by the use of 2 drones. And the intelligence authorities attacked the houses of these individuals. So through the use of drones, they were able to identify these individuals and to arrest them.
This also information you had received. Okay, we've made a note
بله
of
اینو هم
that.
از طریق منابع خودم
This is something I have received from my resources.
We have made a note of that. Is there anything else?
متشکرم برای وقتی
Thank you very much for the time that you gave me.
Thank you. I'm glad that you had the opportunity. I have no further questions, Chair.
Good afternoon. I have just a couple of questions that relate to things that were mentioned in your statement. You mentioned that a decision was made when these meetings were held that the special unit should intervene and brutally put down the demonstrations, and I wonder what you mean by the term brutally. Does that include lethal force, or does it mean something else? What did you mean by use of that term? Based on the information you received, of course.
Not only through the information we have received, but also the films that are available and have also been broadcast by Shadi Sadr. It is clear, and we believe in as well, that water cannons were used and other means were used, and there were some firearms that were fired, and some people were killed and injured according to the information that we have received.
To be clear then, the statement that brutal force was used, you're using in hindsight, having seen what happened at the time of the demonstrations, as opposed to having information coming out of the meetings that were held that the plan was to brutally put down the demonstrations, if you understand the difference.
خیر من بحث این که مجوز در
No, it is not so. I received this brutal approach through my sources in the province, in the governor's circles. That's to say that it's not only that I watched films and I came to this conclusion. This kind of encounter, we know that it was the Governor General issued, and Mr. Abdul Karim Graver, who was one in the meeting with him, and also the other advisors that I named. The decision was decided, and it was communicated to others. And as I mentioned before, and also the film of which you have seen, we see how they encounter the protesters. In some, I do have my sources, and also those people who had participated in the city in the protests conveyed that to me. I also have announced the names of one or two of these sources before, and they do exist in the reports that I have given.
Goes to what I find to be kind of a provocative fact, which was that people were informed at the time that forces were brought in from outside the province, and that all of the anti-riot forces had covered their faces. Now, the people on the panel have seen films, we've seen films where the security forces do not have their faces covered, not intentionally anyway, some wear helmets, but it doesn't appear that all the security forces have covered their faces. What does this mean here? Is it your information that there was some decision made that the anti-riot forces in Bushehr were going to cover their faces and did cover their faces? And if so, what inference might we draw from that?
If I understand your question correctly, what you mean is that the anti-riot forces, they never covered their faces. Is that what you're saying? Because I said that these forces were brought in from elsewhere, and a number of them had covered their faces, and some of them had not covered their faces. That's to say, we did have both kinds during these protests. That's to say, in the wave of suppression of the protests, we had both kinds. In any event, you also have to consider that it is a city with a population of 200,000 people. It's a small city, and everybody knows everybody else. And therefore, when people come and try to suppress others, they don't like to be identified by those who live there. And these are the ones who had covered their faces.
Thank you. That was precisely my question, was whether this was done intentionally so they could not be identified. And I'm assuming that one can draw an inference from that one way or the other about what their future activities might be. Thank you.
Mr. Witness, can I just ask a couple of questions about the anti-riot forces? First of all, the information you had about the way in which the anti-riot forces were operating came from the same source as the source that gave you information about the meetings? Or did you have a more direct source directly?
بله، منبعی که من دارم
the source that I have, since he was a high-ranking security person in the province, can be trusted because he himself had heard what he conveyed to me.
So that your source had direct information about the way in which the anti-riot forces worked on that occasion, but also more generally? Both?
بله، من همه اطلاعاتم رو از طریق
Yes, I got all my information from the sources who were in the picture of what was happening. Yes, that's how I gained my information.
Okay. And the men, the forces who were brought in to help the anti-riot forces, were these police officers? Were these security agents? Who were they, as far as you understood, that were brought in to help the anti-riot forces?
میشه گفت که اینا رو
We can say that in the context of different organizations, we do have people who specialize in countering protests or riots, and these are individuals who had been brought in from different provinces. They were both from the police and from security. And I have to say that since I was a journalist in Bushehr myself, I had my sources from then, and these are the same sources who are still in contact with me. They were not gained overnight, and therefore what they give me, the information, is quite authentic and quite credible. I knew them from the time that I was a journalist in Bushehr myself, and my sources said that these people were both from the province and from outside the province, and they included both the police and also the security people.
Did you ever hear from your sources that people had been released from prison, criminals, to in any way assist the anti-riot forces?
در خود بوشهر
I can say that I do not remember that something like this happened in Bushehr itself. But it is something that I had heard before, that it had happened elsewhere. it is something rather ordinary that under certain situations they use these people. But in Bushehr, no, I have not heard anything.
Do you know about this in other places? Do you know anything?
من هم بر اساس
On the basis of what I have heard and on the basis of what I have seen in publications and those who have provided information and in the talks that I have had is this is something that I have heard. I have not had any direct contact about this, but I have heard that those who were in prison, either those who had committed a murder or had important crimes, they would give them a furlough, that's to say, that they would encourage them to come out and to suppress people. But unfortunately, I have not seen them myself in operation. And I don't know anybody who directly knows about the operations of these people either.
Any details about what you've heard about that then? Am I correct? Other than what you've told us?
No, I don't.
Much, Mr. Witness.
yok.
I think that's the questions from the panel. Over to you, counsel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Witness, for your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness, for your testimony.
Pleasure.
We appreciate the effort you've made to testify, and we will listen and have listened to your testimony, and we'll take it into account, of course. Thank you very much.